Hi everyone and good morning. It's a great honor for me to come here and speak to you today. I decided to change my speech a little, as Edmund was saying, and decided to talk a little bit about my own personal life experiences while touching also on the original topic of failure. I intend to briefly share these few experiences, personal stories and observations, both as an employer of roughly a couple hundred people in Hong Kong, mostly young people under the age of 30, and also my own personal life experience that I've gone through. The first thing I wanted to share with you is that for the first 5, or maybe even 10 first years of your professional life, don't do it for money, the comfort, or the prestige. For many of you, your first 5 to 10 years of your working life will be a fraction of what you will be earning. You might be earning 30% or 50% more than your friend who works for that dodgy startup that has no money. But I guarantee you, it is nothing compared to how much you will be earning from year 10 onwards. So your first 5 to 10 years, if you do it for money, it's like you're working for your retirement early on. It's like you're planning, basically, to put money into your piggy bank. For what purpose? Do it because you love it, have fun with it, and are passionate about it. Do it because you know that your life education is only yet to begin. Like graduating is just another milestone in your journey as you start your first job, or you start your own company. My own experience with working for startups or having started a startup is that typically those are good working environments because there's nobody else. It's you and 5 other people. You can start working for a startup because you have opportunities to rise quickly or opportunities to take on challenges that in a larger corporation you would never have. Because large corporations would end up putting you into little boxes or having you do a specific task, and those are all valuable experiences. But it will take time to get to those challenges, and you will never really test yourself in those environments as you would perhaps in an early startup. But a startup may go out of business tomorrow. You may not get your paycheck in time. And that is, of course, a risk. I want to talk a little bit about what it means when you start off with something cushy in the beginning. And I'll share you later with an experience that I've had. If you're in a cushy job, comfortable lifestyles and high pay really early on, you already start life as being restricted if there's something there that you don't want to lose. And entrepreneurialism does not do well in such an environment. 20 years ago when I moved to Hong Kong, first time, actually I'm not really from Hong Kong, I grew up in Austria. I started an internet service provider in Hong Kong called Hong Kong Online. And my office was set up in Lai Chi Kok, Cheung Sha Wan. It was a really dodgy setup because it was cheap. Back then when all of the factories basically moved to China, it was cheap. So I lived in a shared flat with a room that was tiny in size. The kitchen, I barely fit into it myself. And when I walked home from work, usually around midnight or 1 a.m., my company with the crabs and critters that basically escaped from the Cheung Sha Wan market. And that market, as some of you may know, is where the bird flu broke out back in '97. And I lived on very little these days. But I was young, I was hungry, I was passionate about what I was doing. I was uncomfortable, of course, I was stressed out, challenged, but I had nothing to lose. And I learned more about overcoming adversity and challenging odds and what I was capable of than any education could have afforded me then or before. But I will also tell you that in those times it was very hard for me to hold on to a steady girlfriend. But it was simply another one of life's lessons. But just imagine for a second that now, today, and some of you maybe not sure if you're 25, 26 or whatever, you're all flying business class, you're all eating in the best restaurants, you're all having sort of a great lifestyle, shall we say, buying expensive clothes and living in nice apartments. And then you're asked you want to start a company, you want to begin something new, but you have to sort of cut back in your lifestyle. That is very hard for most people to do. So start young while you have nothing to lose. Especially in your early years, to me, there is no trade for money versus experience. But what I see in Hong Kong, both as an employer and as well, is that money becomes the factor or one of the most important determinant factors as to why you take a job or do or take a position somewhere. And it makes sense, of course, because that's how success is graded. The university applies themselves as to, we are a good university because we can get you a job that can pay you X amount more, or can pay you Y amount more, or because you can get a job at a great bank, or because you can get a job at a great law firm. And those are all good measures. But there is no such thing as a fun index, or a learning index, or a passion index when you join that company. And so you start off already at a young age gearing towards basically money. Yet, as I said before, the amount of money you make in your first 5 to 10 years is insignificant in proportion to what you will be earning in your later years of life. When I was 23, I had my first and only corporate job, and things weren't going well. And I had to take my startup and relegate it into a hobby. I also had to appease my parents, who weren't happy with what I was doing at the time, and I had to find a way to fund it. So I joined AT&T Solutions. And back then, I didn't realize that my early experiences in internet was something desirable. So I ended up getting a reasonably high 6-digit pay and started embarking at the age of 23 in what suddenly became a very comfortable lifestyle. I moved to a flat, about 1,200 square foot on mid-levels, which was a big upgrade from Cheung. I was working in an office in Times Square, and I suddenly was eating in places that required me to give tips, and I was flying business class. So life seemed to be suddenly very good. I was becoming comfortable. And my job became fine because I enjoyed the lifestyle. But did I enjoy what I was actually doing? And I found myself mostly dealing at the time with corporate-imposed roadblocks, strange corporate structures that won't allow me to progress the way I needed to, and politics. And my personal passion started to take a back foot because I started compromising with myself, because I thought I was happy, but when in fact I wasn't. I decided I had to leave this and went from the posh AT&T offices to a hole-in-one shy on Burroughs Street with an office that was smaller than the last apartment I stayed in. I also had to move to a small apartment, of course. And I managed to still pack in 25 people to work for me in that office, and had lovely views to other people's bathrooms. And I never looked back since. But why did I do this? I realized I wasn't having much fun, that the money I was making was good, but I wasn't happy, and most importantly of all, I found myself compromising with my goals and values, what was important to me. And the sudden comfort I had achieved was a very dangerous trap, in which had I been there maybe for 5 or 6 more years, I probably wouldn't have been able to come out of it. And I thought also if I would regret that choice, and I'm glad I did what I did. If I look back, could I do what I did back then when I was in my 30s or my 40s? If I had to support a family, if I had to pay for a mortgage, or whatever else responsible wage earners had to do? I don't know. I don't think so. It would have been very selfish for me if I had these responsibilities to just embark on something and risk the life of others at that point, who would have been very important to me. But for me, it was okay. I was 24. I can live on Fan and McDonald's. It wasn't expensive. That's all I needed. Worst case, I can always find another job. There's thousands out there. No big deal. And given that most people, anyway myself, spend most of their time, probably 50 or 60% of your sort of living day working, wouldn't it really just suck if you were basically doing something you didn't like, or that you were complaining? Do you come home from work and complain about your work, or do you come home and talk about how exciting it is, how much fun it is, and how you're excited to go there the next day? And if you start coming home and complaining about your day at work, and it goes on for weeks and weeks, you probably should start thinking about doing something else, and perhaps exploring that as a direction. So, do something you love, work hard, play hard, and have fun to enjoy it. And I guess one of my favorite quotes in this one, for some of you who have read Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, is the quote that Grandpa George gave. There's plenty of money out there. They print more every day. So again, money just isn't that important, especially recently. The other thing I want to talk to you about I'll start with another quote for George Burns. And he said, "I'd rather be a failure at something I love than a success at something I hate." When I started my entrepreneurial life, I had no clear idea of what I needed. As they say, ignorance is bliss. I was very optimistic. I had energy. That was all I needed.